Oh, well, hello there, and welcome to A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. Well, it's one thing to return to cinemas, it's another thing to watch an MCU film, and it's a third thing to see a DCEU film. Because today, I got to finally see James Gunn's The Suicide Squad, and what a journey I have been on with this property in particular. Because I remember way back in the eons of time, about 2014, 2015, when I first heard that a Suicide Squad movie was being done. And this was the point I remember distinctly. You know, we'd had Man of Steel. I think we'd had Batman versus... No, they'd announced Man of... Yeah, we'd had Man of Steel, they'd announced Batman versus Superman, and then they announced Suicide Squad. And all of a sudden, my mind was absolutely blown, because it was like a Suicide Squad film. I never, in my wildest dreams, did I think they were going to take that property and try and make a big Hollywood film of it, because the Suicide Squad, even its title, is one that people go, oh, really? You know, and the nature of the team, the sort of disposable nature of most of the characters, the humour, whilst also sort of the darkness of it, whilst also being sort of Black Ops. Oh, I thought this is going to be something else. This shows that DC are going in a very different direction to Marvel. They're going to try some wild things. And again, this is pre-Batman vs Superman, which again was like, oh my god. This is something people have waited decades for. It probably back since the 89 Batman. Again, they're trying wild things. And then history happened the way it did. And Batman vs Superman came out, and I remember being a staunch defender of it at the time, going, look, it's not a perfect film, but there are slivers of brilliance in it. There are slivers of ideas here that it's just a jigsaw puzzle where the ideas don't quite all work together quite cohesively. And I remember defending it. But all the stake was on the Suicide Squad. Now, I realise I'm talking a lot more about the David Ayer one than I am about the James Gunn one, so we will get to that, but this is where I will, the sort of experience that I had. But we got to 2016, went into David Ayer's Suicide Squad. I remember seeing the trailer for it, all the different styles and the music and the way they had Will Smith and Margot Robbie, Jai Courtney. This was supposed to be a, sort of, this is A-listers, but also sort of a mix of different quality people. And there's a certain sort of coolness to the style. And as I say, went in feeling one thing, came out feeling something very different. And it was very much the experience that I think a lot of people had going into Phantom Menace, where you kind of walked out going, well, I think I liked some of that. And as time has passed, we've sort of reflected upon the 2016 Suicide Squad and realised, not a good film. Not a good film. And I'll get into probably some of the details of why that is later on. But we then come 4 years later, and we have James Gunn's Suicide Squad. And I'm going to keep having to call them David Ayer's Suicide Squad and James Gunn's Suicide Squad, because I feel like calling it Suicide Squad and The Suicide Squad will cause a lot of confusion. And the truth is, a lot of people went in saying, well, back after David Ayer's Suicide Squad came out, saying, oh, well, James Gunn, it should have been James Gunn. He's shown what he can do with Guardians of the Galaxy, and the 2016 Suicide Squad was essentially a knockoff of Guardians in some respect. And so going into this, people are like, well, are we essentially going to watch slightly different Guardians of the Galaxy, but this, DC's Guardians of the Galaxy? And to his credit, that's not what we get here. Because, and I've been really puzzling over why the first one didn't work and the second one has. Because this film is so much better. I mean, it's just from the off, James Gunn demonstrates that he understands what the Suicide Squad is. Now, the problem I suppose talking about this is I don't want to spoil it, because I genuinely think going in, the premise of the Suicide Squad, notwithstanding, you know that most of these characters are not going to make it out. They are C, D, E, and Z list supervillains and anti-heroes. These are characters that no one cares about, no one's even heard of. I mean, who have followed DC for decades and decades, even I've not heard of Weasel or Ratcatcher 2. I've heard of Polka Dot Man, but I had no idea what his deal was. And so you have this, and of course we have Harley Quinn come back. We have Bloodsport, played by Idris Elba. We have Peacemaker, played by John Cena. And we even have Rick Flag, back. And so you're sort of seeing smatterings of okay, so they're not completely throwing out everything from the 2016 one. They've brought Jai Courtney back as Captain Boomerang. They brought Margot Robbie back as Harley Quinn, and they brought Joel Kinnaman back as Rick Flag. And you think, okay, so is this a sequel? But we knew it wasn't a sequel. Not in and Viola Davis, which of course is Amanda Waller and should be Amanda Waller forever. But yeah, you kind of go and go, this isn't, even based on the trailers and just sort of the energy around it, we knew this wasn't going to be a sequel. Because, again, what James Gunn wanted to do was just throw it all out. Throw all of the stuff before, all the baggage of the David Ayer one and what Warner Brothers' plan was back in 2016, and he just wants to make his own Suicide Squad. But take some of the elements that worked, like Margot Robbie, or like Viola Davis, who are perfect and should always play those characters. And so going into this, like I say, I don't really want to spoil it, because you just go in thinking, God, these are like nobodies. Are all of them going to die? Are some of them going to die? Are most of them going to die? How is this going to play out? Because you do get that sense of, a team was sent. The film opens, and I won't say who's on the team, but a team is sent out, and it doesn't go very well for most of that team. And so then it's very much okay, let's walk this back and try and reevaluate and start again. And it has that sort of reset element to it where you think, oh, see, James Gunn demonstrates that he understands the Suicide Squad so much more than David Ayer. Because David Ayer's Suicide Squad had one character die at the beginning to demonstrate, oh, these characters are disposable, and then one character die at the end. But even that death was sort of this big noble sacrifice, and even then, it's because he's like a god being, he might come, it's very, it's not a particularly Suicide Squad style death, whereas James Gunn just massacres like so many people to start with to demonstrate, oh, all of these characters are disposable, and going forward, when we are introduced to the proper team, all of these characters are disposable. And I love that, because I think that's so much better. That so much demonstrates that this isn't like a traditional A-list superhero film. It's not even like Guardians of the Galaxy. The point of this whole film, the point of the Suicide Squad property, is that these are, for a start, they're villains. They are villains. There's a character called Weasel, and they immediately say, yeah, this guy, they're sort of trying to discuss what he is. And they go, well, is he a werewolf? Is he some kind of dog? And he goes, no, he's not. He's not a werewolf. He's not dangerous. Well, he is dangerous. He killed 27 children, and that's got that sort of thing of blacker than black humor to it. But again, it demonstrates that sense of, okay, these are weirdos, and they're not likable. They're not heroic, and so therefore we're not too distressed when they start dying off. And of course in this version, so some of the characters who will be the mainstay, the characters we follow, include Idris Elba's Bloodsport, who very clearly is supposed to be a replacement for Will Smith's Deadshot. And it's weird not having Deadshot on the Suicide Squad. He's kind of important, but, and I'll get, again, this when I come back, circling back to do a quick comparison, I understand why Will Smith wouldn't come back, and why, to be honest, Will Smith's Deadshot doesn't really work. Whereas Bloodsport, is almost a like-for-like character, except just done much more authentically to what the character represents. You have John Cena's Peacemaker. You have King Shark, who is voiced by the name's gone out of my head. Oh goodness, Rocky. Producer wife, who plays Rocky. And Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester Stallone as King Shark, which is amazing. It's genuinely what a get, and what a, you know, he's very much supposed to be sort of the Groot type character, and yet miles different, and just is such a great personality, whilst also being incredibly dumb and saying so few lines. Wonderful. And then you even have, you know, so the characters that I couldn't believe I would get emotionally connected to, who I think, oh wow, I actually do care and sort of get invested, are Ratcatcher 2 and Polka Dot Man, who again, these are two characters who I've not even like particularly heard of, but actually, again, James Gunn finds a way to make you genuinely care about these two nothing like villain type characters. And again, so like I say, James Gunn really understands what the Suicide Squad is there for. You know, I suppose the three components are: one, you have that sort of DC lore stuff where you have all a bunch of nobody characters thrown together, and you kind of know who some of them are, you kind of don't know who all of them are, and you think, oh wow, you know, what world does this exist in? What heroes, you know, have faced off against which villains and that kind of thing. You have the fact that the Suicide Squad really is a Black Ops team, and so whatever film they should be in, and I know with the David Ayer one that this was the original vision on some capacity, on some level, it's clearly supposed to be a war film. It's very clear, you know, the Suicide Squad works best in sort of a war film type setting, and that's exactly what this is. Set on Corto Maltese, you just, you know, they get sent in, and they're Black Ops, they're fighting soldiers. I mean, they're like shark people and men who use polka dots to kill people, but they're fighting soldiers, and that feels much more Suicide Squad-y. And as I've said, the black humour, because again, this has such a dark, twisted sensibility to it, and yet it's so funny. So funny, because you just have these moments. Again, you have this dumb shark who can't help but can't help himself but eat people, but also is kind of lovable in a way that's like, oh, he's well-meaning, and it has that same, the whole thing sort of represents that sensibility to it. And then of course you've got sort of the villain side of things, where you've got, you know, these sort of, I don't know, like dictator types who don't really matter because it's not about that. And then you have Peter Capaldi as the Thinker, and again, he is great. And Peter Capaldi is just great, generally. You know, of course, showing the Doctor Who colours again, but even outside of that, Peter Capaldi is just a fantastic pick for this. And of course, it all leads up to the thing that they, again, spoiled in the trailer, Starro. Starro, what a weird character to go for, and yet so suitable. And so you've got this, you know, all of these elements in place, and it's just exactly what the Suicide Squad should be. And it just knocks it out the park. It really, really does. But yeah, so going back to the David Ayer one, so I suppose the comparison, so like I say, I've been puzzling over why this one seems to work and the David Ayer one just fell on its face. And of course we've seen a lot of press and media about the fact that, you know, this film, during production, during post-production, and then even a little after that, has been cut to heck. Like it's been edited and re-edited, and new editors were brought in and re-edited again. And initially it was, you know, it's supposed to be more like a war film, because why would you bring David Ayer in if you're not going to make sort of a dark, you know, just off of Fury? Why would you bring him in otherwise? But then, quite clearly, this is around the time that Guardians of the Galaxy came out, so then it's trying to become that, and you just feel a film in conflict with itself. And of course now we've had David Ayer coming out saying, oh, I made this film that was passionate to me and you'll never get to see it, or I don't think you will because Warner Brothers just cut it to heck. And there is a version that exists that is my true vision, very much trying to do the Zack Snyder release the Ayer cut. But frankly, I don't think any version of it works. I think on its core it doesn't. I don't think David Ayer understood Suicide Squad like James Gunn does. I understand why you'd bring David Ayer in, because again, he fits that war film aesthetic, that Black Ops, you know, these are gun-toting, mercenary type characters. And I understand why that you think, oh, David Ayer could really make that a serious film. But the problem is that I don't think he necessarily had that vision himself, because I suppose there's several problems. One, the Will Smith of it, which is Will Smith is a great Hollywood A-list star. And what I get, and this is during a time when he was sort of trying to reconstruct himself and go, okay, I'm going to try some different things, which he does every couple of years, goes, okay, I'm going to try and, you know, be something different in the eyes of Hollywood. But he is ultimately still Will Smith, and he doesn't really know how to play dark. Even his darkest characters, you know, if you think back to things like Hancock, you know, he can't help but lean more towards being much more heroic and much more redeemable. And it just doesn't work. You know, you have the, I mean, Deadshot, the whole point is he's an assassin who has a daughter. And the thing is, the daughter is the one ray of light that keeps him from, you know, that kind of means, oh, maybe he does all of this for a reason. But they couldn't help but have Will Smith just make him nobler and nobler to the point where he is essentially a hero type character. Whereas if you put him alongside Idris Elba with the exact same premise, with a guy who's a mercenary but has a daughter, the opening scene between him and his daughter have them basically throwing F-words at each other and him saying he didn't even want her. So it indicates he's not a good person. And over the course of the film, it indicates he is not a good person. He might have moments of nobility, but ultimately they're in spite of his true nature. And that is much better. And so you have that kind of conflict, and that's the difference, you know, emblematic of the difference, where David Ayer doesn't really want to make a film about villains. He wants to make a film about outcasts who come together and find the goodness. And again, he kind of, you know, he even tries to make Joker and Harley Quinn romantic, which is horrifying. And so you get that sense that he just doesn't quite want to make the film. And then, of course, as I say, got cut by Warner Brothers and ended up trying to be Guardians. And then you've also got the stuff with the Enchantress as well, where it's like, this, you know, tries to build up to a big Marvel-style climax. It just, again, Sky Portals doesn't work, and it's not really Suicide Squad, whereas this, yes, it does have a giant mind-controlling starfish, but it's so ludicrous. And again, it feels much more in keeping with what that premise is. Margot Robbie is amazing in this. This is possibly, between her 3 films as Harley Quinn, this is the best one for me. There is an issue where, I suppose, for 2 acts of the film, she's actually almost in her own film, a completely separate film from everyone else. But man, that gives her so much room to breathe, and she does just... I like Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn I have in the last 2 films, but this feels much better. This is the best film in which she's been able to be the character in. It's ironic, because the last DC film I saw in the cinema was Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey, but I didn't click with that in the way that I should have done. I found it, even though she's good in it, I found it a horrifyingly dull film. And so here, she's so much better, and she just has this moment where you think, oh, Harley Quinn can switch between anti-hero, villain, and active hero, and you can tell that she kind of has this, you know, she is essentially crazy, and she'll switch between those different personas depending on the situation around her. And again, there's just this one action sequence which is with her essentially doing a grand escape that is just brilliant. This is without doubt her best film, and I really hope we get more Margot Robbie Harley Quinn. As I say, Viola Davis knocks it out of the park. really, I mean, she did in the first one as well, but here again, we need more Amanda Waller. We need more, you know, Suicide Squad. And yeah, this film just comes together so well. And I know we've got things like the Peacemaker spin-off with John Cena, and I'm really happy to see that, because again, we have the John Cena, Idris Elba sort of, you know, these are two guys who are essentially the same thing, sort of butting heads against each other, you know, comparing gun sizes, and that's such a great dynamic. And then you throw Joel Kinnaman in with them as well, that works so well, the three of them. And so I am, you know, John Cena is brilliant in this. And so we'll get the spin-off with him. I hope we get more Suicide Squad, though it's unlikely, we'll see. And with James Gunn now back in the arms of Marvel with Guardians 3, it's unclear if, even if there was a Suicide Squad sequel, whether it'd be someone else, a third director who'd helm it, possibly. But that's so good. Such a good film. And it really leans into the gore, like I say, the humour and the gore of it. So it's just, you know, exactly what that premise is supposed to be. What a good film. Genuinely great. So happy I saw it. And again, cinema viewing. Really pleased to have seen this in the theatre. Yes. Well, I feel another notch on the ladder to being back up to the theatre experience that we've been waiting for. Assuming we don't end up losing that experience again. Who's to say? Anyway, thank you for joining me. If you like this video, hit the like button, comment below, and share the video, because it's all helping the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel and hit the little bell to get notifications of when new videos are uploaded. Check out my back catalogue of over 200 videos, and follow me on Twitter at Jordan_Woodley, where I tweet about TV shows and films, and I share these videos once they're uploaded to YouTube, either the day of or the day after. Thank you for joining me. Take care.